Dune Prophecy Season 1 Episode 2 is called Two Wolves, and I think one possible interpretation of that is Desmond on the one hand and Valya on the other, who are clearly on two sides of a brewing war by the end of the episode. Perhaps from the point of view of the Sisterhood, the two wolves would be Desmond and the vengeful Dorothea, the woman we saw Valya use the voice on early in Episode 1, She's Back. Personally, I much prefer the first interpretation. Episode 2 is much better than the previous one, but that's a very low bar to meet. This time, we get a slightly insipid and weak title sequence, and it's not really up to the standard of what we expect from HBO, particularly in terms of the theme music. I guess Ramin Djawadi wasn't available for whatever reason. We begin with the Sisterhood bereft at Katya's death and eager to get answers about it. A graduate of the Sisterhood returns from the Suck School to perform the autopsy and confirms that Katya's death isn't the result of anything external, but something to do with her Meridian network, a phrase I couldn't find any references to in regard to the Dune universe. I guess we'll get more on that as the season progresses. Down in the library, a group of the younger sisters that we saw last episode are discussing the death. We finally get a couple of their names. Maybe I missed them last time. The angry one seems to be Theodosa, and the quiet one is Lila, who we later find out is the granddaughter of Dorothea, Valya's victim last episode. Valya and Tula, her slightly more emotional younger sister, are also discussing death in the small room overlooking the main library. Valya is going to the capital because she has news of the similar death of the Richese boy that happened there. She's convinced that these two deaths are evidence that a prophecy is about to be fulfilled, a prophecy that's dangerous for the Sisterhood. In order to deal with this, Lila must go through a process called the agony. The big drawback of Lila doing this is it could expose the secret of what happened to Lila's grandmother, something that's dangerous for Valya, for Tula, and other senior members of the Sisterhood as well. I think this storyline has got some potential. Acknowledging that the Sisterhood is on some level corrupt is giving the plot some stakes, but the dialogue is absolutely god-awful, cheesy soap opera stuff. You don't believe I'm up to the task. Emotions cloud judgment. Hard choices have to be made. I raised her. She's not your child. She's the one who can give us the answers we need. Just awful, vapid, stereotype dialogue that takes an interesting plotline and suggests that we have writers here who just aren't willing to put in the effort to make things new or interesting. Anyway, Valya takes Theodosa to the capital with her, presumably to introduce her to the Princess Enes. Valya and Theodosa leave immediately, but I'm going to hang back with the Sisterhood to go through that plot line first. In Valya's absence, we discover that Lila and Tula have a close relationship. They kind of view each other as surrogate mother and daughter, which is perhaps inappropriately close for the Sisterhood. We discover the name of the prophecy is the Turin Arafel, and it could lead to the downfall of the Sisterhood. Tula explains that Lila can undergo the process called the agony, which obviously sounds like no fun, to talk to her great-great-grandmother, the founder of the Sisterhood. Undergoing this could unlock her genetic memories of her female ancestors. Later, we learn that Lila is particularly interested in meeting her mother. Tula admits that sometimes she thinks of herself as Lila's mother, but the process she goes through can't be controlled and there's no guarantee that her mother is going to be there. The next time we see Tula, she's preparing the poison for the process that Lila will go through. Tula is hearing voices, doesn't seem to be bothered by them, which suggests that she's been through the agony herself. Another elderly sister reminds Tula that the lives of all the sisters in the building are at stake, which feels like a lazy attempt by the script to manufacture some conflicts about Lila possibly not doing the process, which on the one hand, obviously in terms of the plot, she's going to do it, and secondly, there hasn't been enough work done to make me care about all the characters in the Sisterhood. So this just feels like another lazy way to introduce a senior member of the Sisterhood. Finally, in this plotline, we see Lila ready to undergo the procedure. Tula gives us a big speech, during which there are lots of whispering voices in the background, and these whispering voices are some nice setup for what we're about to see. The poison gets administered into Lila's eye. She starts screaming, and the visions begin, or the descent into her ancestral memories, or the unlocking of her genetic memory, which I think was the phrase earlier in the episode. There, she meets her grandmother, who Valya killed in episode 1. Out of revenge against the Harkonnens, her grandmother decides to kill Lila. So, just to be clear again, the grandmother decides to kill her granddaughter. Is this show serious? Is it some kind of massive troll on the part of HBO? On the one hand, I love the visual depiction of whatever this internal world is called. It's really creepy and unsettling. I liked the prophecy bit, one born twice, once in blood and once in spice. Sounds like Desmond Hart, I think. But the way it ends, Dorothea hates the Harkonnens so much she will end the life of her granddaughter. I just can't get over how dumb that is. I've not read the book this is based on. Hopefully the book's not that dumb as well. Why put the work into Lila as a character just to get rid of her so quickly? I'd feel better about it if more work had been put into the other Sisterhood characters, but with Lila gone, it feels like we're back to square one in terms of characterization. So that's the Sisterhood plotline. Now let's go over to Salusa Secundus and the royal family. We start with the main players, minus the Emperor himself, standing around the body of the dead Richese boy, with Duke Richese clearly in the anger stage of grief. He reminds the royal family that he has a fleet in orbit, he is willing to use it, if necessary, against the royal palace. The Empress feigns shock, saying this was clearly an accident, caused by the illegal thinking machine toy that the boy had. This doesn't do much to placate the Duke. Then we cut to the Emperor talking to Desmond. The Emperor insists he didn't ask Desmond to commit those murders, but Desmond says the Emperor made his intent clear, and Desmond, as a loyal soldier, carried out his instructions. Reflecting on this episode, I feel that things would be much better if Mark Strong was playing Duke Richese, as this would give the Duke more of a genuine sense of threat. To complement this, I think the actor playing the Duke would be better off as the Emperor. Mark Strong just doesn't suit morally weak characters, and they seem to want to make the Emperor as weak as possible. So basically, swapping those two actors round would have made this a much more interesting series for me. So the Emperor arrests Desmond, and then a couple of scenes later, his wife points out that actually Desmond could have value for them as a loyal soldier, willing to carry out their actions. On having this pointed out, the Emperor changes his mind immediately. So basically, the woman speaks, and the man changes his mind without a second thought. We see a similar thing later on, when Valya asks to speak to Desmond, and the Emperor says no. The Empress says, "Oh, go on," and the Emperor changes his mind straight away. Pathetic writing that might be believable if it was a different actor, but I've seen Mark Strong in other things. He's just not right for the character that they have here. So I could go on and recap the rest of the episode, but honestly, I feel I'm done with this series. The combination of a terribly structured first episode, what Dorothea did to Lila here, a member of her own family, and the way that the male characters just seem to exist to be immediately manipulated by the women, the bland dialogue that could be ripped from literally any TV series of the last 50 years. I'm just not excited about wanting to talk about this anymore. Even a bit of HBO sexposition just doesn't interest me now. And on top of that, it's got all the normal problems that prequels have. We know that the Sisterhood will survive. We know that the Carino family will be on the throne in 10,000 years' time. So for prequels, you need something really good to keep you interested. And this isn't really good, and I'm just not interested. There's so many other videos I want to make that maybe I'll come back to this after the series is finished, but the fact it's only 6 episodes leads me to think that maybe HBO don't have much confidence in this either. This episode is much better than the first one, but it's still boring. I'm bored with it. I'm just not excited about seeing another episode and making another video about it, so I think I'm not going to. Thanks for watching.